it's SorenPlays, your favorite Lunar Caster, and today it's episode 2 of Mythological Mondays. Last week we went over the divine runes, what their basis is in mythology, and how their stories in mythology impacted the way that they are being played in Elestrals. Today we're going to continue off of that trend and go over their symbols of powers and the animals that they represent, and if the animals are in Elestrals, what Elestrals are associated with those gods. Now, disclaimer, some of these aren't fact. They're opinions based off of their stories, what animals and how they're closely related, and if they're tied to the element. So far, there are only 2 elements, solar and lunar, that have a definitive Elestral that corresponds with their divine rune. Now, I'm going to go over those, and then I'm going to go over the other animals for each divine out there and how they correlate. I would love to hear your comments on your opinions and stuff in the comments on if you agree or disagree and why and why not. So let's get into it. First, we're going to start with Demeter. In the game, her symbol of power, or her artifact as they like to call it, is her scythe. Now, Scythe of Demeter, what it does is it empowers the Elestral, giving it +2 attack and +3 defense. Now, when the empowered Elestral destroys an Elestral in battle, you can return Earth Spirits from your underworld to your spirit deck. But if Demeter is enchanted on your field, you can return 2 2 Earth Spirits instead. Now, it's interesting for this because mythology-wise, Demeter is represented by 3 symbols. Wheat ears, the winged serpent, and the cornucopia. Now, we do have cornucopia in the game, which that'll be a separate video going over cards that are in the game that are related to the myths and mythology. But specifically, why Scythe of Demeter? Well, so I did a little research into why the scythe was important. So with the scythe was a tool used to cut grass and grain, similar to a sickle, but it's longer and it's more two-handed. And the imagery of the scythe was naturally extended to death, which fits with Demeter because, as you learned in the last episode, she is also one of the underworld deities as well. So it ties in with the death portion. But in agrarian societies, harvesting in the fall represented the death of the year, and death was seen as a harvesting souls for the afterlife, which is why when you see the Grim Reaper, he's using a scythe because he's harvesting the souls. Also, the scythe's blade, as you can see in Scythe of Demeter, is that of a crescent moon, which of itself symbolizes the natural cycle of birth, growth, and death. So it's very fitting for Demeter to have this. So for her spirits, or animals that represent her, let me go to my notes real quick, because I kind of have them scattered. Her sacred animals were a serpent, which goes along with the underworld aspect, a pig, and a spotted lizard. Now, going through, there are pigs in the game. Excuse me. I mean, now you have motherhood and stuff, so it works, but that's not the route I went with for this. I kind of stuck with the base set of when this card came out, and I stuck with base set for this. So for Scythe of Demeter, the animal I chose to represent her sacred animal in Elestrals is the Dratire and Lotagon line. Now, both of them are Earth, so it fits with Demeter. And they're a dragon, they're a fruit dragon. And dragons are known to have serpentine qualities, so it fits with the serpent side of things. Also, their ability involves destroying cards and regenerating cards in health. So, for example, Dratire's effect is when you cast Ambrosia, which is healing yourself, you draw 2 cards. So you're regenerating cards and healing yourself. Now, on the flip side, Lotagon, when a player casts Ambrosia, when you heal, you destroy. So you see that cycle, you're destroying and you're rebirthing or regaining life. So it's a cycle, which is very fitting Demeter. Now in the new set, you have Mudlet, which you could kind of say is another one of her spirit animals. Obviously, you can have more spirit animals, but I kind of wanted to stick to the just one animal in their line if they have one. Now, when I pick these, they're not all based on, oh, well, this is a 7/8, so it's really strong. Some of them, as you'll see later, only have one form, and that's it. It doesn't have any ascension lines or anything. So bear in mind for that. So that's Demeter's representation. Next, we're moving on to Hephaestus. Now, Festus, his symbol of power is a hammer. Well, in this game, it's Hammer of Festus. But in Mythology, he's represented by the hammer, anvil, and tongs, which a lot of his support cards are hammer or are anvils and tongs. Now, his sacred animals for this game are the donkey, the guard dog, and the crane. Really weird animals to pick from for his sacred animals, but I mean, I've seen weirder, as we'll get into this. So Festus in the game, his symbol of power is his hammer, which corresponds to regular mythology. So Hammer of Festus, the Empowered Celestial gets only +1 attack for each enchanted rune on your field. So while Festus is enchanted, the Empowered Celestial cannot be targeted by opponent's celestial effects, which is a very common trend amongst artifacts where it's when their main divine rune is out on the field, they're unaffected. So for his animal, there really isn't, I don't think I ever saw a donkey, and there really is no crane. You could kind of go for crane and say maybe not Infrostix, but Inferics or Exalter. But for this, I went with Necrof. Obviously, he's a guard dog. He's a Cerberus. And what Cerberus is known for is being the guard dog of the underworld. Now, being the underworld for this game is the graveyard, there really is no need for guarding it. However, he does, in the lore of Elestrals, guard Tartarus, which that'll be a separate video, so I won't go into full details on that. So for Necrof, when Necrof destroys an opponent's Celestial in battle, that opponent must expend a spirit. Necrof is really good, especially in Five Guys decks. He's one of the main components of it. But after a while, people started teching in, just give him water, and he's just a natural 5. He doesn't have to worry about the burn. Necrof then ascends into Blazerus. Blazerus can attack twice during your battle phase. And when he destroys a second Celestial in the same battle phase, he can special ascend into Trifernal from your hand or deck. Trifernal, he's a 14/3 beater. When an opponent casts an Celestial, you can expend a fire in order to give it -3 until your next end phase. If that Celestial's defense is reduced to 0 by this effect, it is destroyed. Now, there aren't a lot of cards in this game currently that once you reduce an Celestial's defense or attack to 0, it's automatically destroyed. I can only think of Trifernal, the new one Cryoblast. Technically, Polaracne does the same thing. But you have to expend to do it, while this is just natural in a way, even though you do have to expend to give it -3. So that's it for Hephaestus. Next, we're talking about Poseidon. Poseidon's symbol of power is obviously his trident. I don't think I've known anyone where when you say, what is Poseidon's weapon, that people don't know that it's the trident. I mean, it's well known. Even Aquaman has a trident, and he's based off of Poseidon in a way. So that's his symbol of power, and in the game it matches. It's the Trident of Poseidon. The Trident of Poseidon, what it does, it gives +2 attack and cannot be targeted by counter runes. While Poseidon's enchanted opponents cannot cast counter runes. Trident has come and gone in waves of playability. It's received a resurgence because it's in the new Chronodile starter deck, which is a really fantastic starter deck. That's not really a starter deck. It's more of a structure deck, and it's playable right out the gate. I've seen people go into lockdown for opponents where opponents can't do anything because they get Chronodile out and bombard the field with Poseidon and Trident Poseidon out on the field. Now, for his sacred animals, Poseidon has some weird sacred animals. Some of them fit, some of them don't. So his sacred animals are fish, dolphin, bull, and horse. Now, the bull and the horse are weird ones, considering Poseidon is of the sea. So where does horses and bulls come into play for that? Horses I can kind of see because there are some horse water monsters called hippocampus, which are horse-fish hybrids. So now if those were his spirit animals, I would understand more. But I don't. So the main ones I focused on for this were fish and dolphin for his sacred animals and Elestrals. Now, there's a lot of fish you can pick for Poseidon, but I chose... Who did I pick? Excuse me. 1 second. I chose for him his sacred Elestral is Aphros. Aphros is a water Elestral. Let me close out these that I'm not using anymore. I chose Aphros, right? Because it's a fish. It's 2 fish. It has a really strong Nexus effect that allows you to draw a card for each water that you receive that way. So one turn you can get 2 cards, right? It's a 2/4. It's pretty strong. Nothing too great. It's not a boss monster like Chronodile, and I wasn't going to pick Chronodile because that'll be a separate video as well, because that doesn't really follow Greek mythology necessarily, but it follows a different pantheon of gods. So yeah, I chose Aphros. Like I said, it's 2 fish. It's yin and yang. Really strong Nexus effect. There really weren't any water bulls and water horses to pick from, and out of all the fish, I think this represents it the best. Next, we're talking about the god of thunder himself and the king of all the Olympians, Zeus. Zeus's symbol is his thunderbolt. I don't think I've ever seen any media where you have Zeus that you don't have his thunderbolt. It's just well known. So thunderbolt in Elestrals gives a empowered Elestral +2 attack. Now, when an empowered Elestral is destroyed an opponent's Elestral in battle, that opponent must expend a spirit. Now, if Zeus is enchanted, that opponent must expend 2 instead. Excuse me, my throat's a little dry. Give me 1 second. That's better. So, you really haven't seen Thunderbolt or Zeus in much play lately, ever since the fall of Thunder Nexus. But even then, in Thunder Nexus, you really didn't run this artifact. Now, I will say, I was doing some testing the other week with Stellar Kristoff and everyone, and Dan has this idea of building half decks for people to play with to get a feel of an Elestrals. And one of them is a Thunder deck. And I will say Thunderbolt is used in a 20-card format for a half deck. Can be broken when you're going up against another deck. I've played this combo many times where it just you beef up your guys and you just start burning and everything, and it's just rough. But Thunderbolt Zeus is a pretty good card. Now, Zeus's sacred animals, one of them matches his brother Poseidon, and it's a bull. I'm not going to go into bull for Zeus because the stories about him and a bull, it's pretty messed up and not safe for kids. I know this isn't really a kids channel, but Elestrals is an inviting community that's welcome to all. So his animal spirit I focus on was an eagle. Now, there is no straight up just eagle card in Elestrals. So for that, I kind of went with a little creative liberty and went with the Elechick line. So Elechick is like a baby eagle, in my opinion. That when you normal cast it, you can search your deck for a Divine Rune and add to your hand. Now, for the longest time, Thunder had everything you needed. It was a searcher for your Divine Runes. It was a searcher for your Stadium card. It was a really strong Nexus deck. So, Elechick, searching for your Zeus, beefing up your board, it's amazing. Can't go wrong with Elechick. It's a 4/1. Now you have Gryphus, where it's like almost a full eagle. Now, for Gryphus, it's a 5/3. It's both a wind and a thunder, which is very fitting for Zeus because he's up in the sky on Mount Olympus, and he's a thunder caster. You can nexus a thunder spirit or a wind spirit from a divine rune, which is interesting because basically what you do is you play Elechick, or one turn, you get your Zeus. Next turn, you ascend into Gryphus. You already have Zeus on the board, or you play Zeus and get spirits on the board, and then you use it. Then you will special ascend Gryphus into his final form. And his final form is, I went with Voltempest. Now, Voltempest is more of a, what's the word I'm looking for? A hippogriff, I think is the right term for him. I know there's some that are interchangeable, like hippogriff and whatnot, but he's an eagle on 4 legs. I mean, I don't know what else to say. I don't really know of any other Elestral that would be a better fit for Zeus than Voltempest. You can disenchant a Thunder or Wind from Voltempest to force an opponent to expend 3 spirits. While Zeus is enchanted, this Voltempest cannot be targeted by opponent's cards effects. He's a 13-10. He's a really strong beater. I've started seeing a lot of people try to build aggro versions of this deck. I know one person at my local built a Volt Tempest Surge deck. And it's kind of funny because he has like all 20 Thunder Spirits and that's about it, and 1 or 2 Wind. He won a couple times, but then he's also drawn. And he's the only person I've known that has drawn a couple times. So that's it for Zeus. Next is Aeolus. No, Aeolus isn't like your traditional god that everyone knows in mythology. He was given a bag of winds by Zeus. So this is his symbol of power. Not a lot of people know the background of Bag of Winds, so I'm going to provide you it. So background of Bag of Winds, it goes back to the Odyssey. To ensure safe passage for Odysseus and his men, Aeolus gave Odysseus a bag of wind, which as you can see on the board, it contained all the winds except the gentle west wind. But when almost home, Odysseus' men were curious and thought that the bag contained treasure and not wind. And so when they opened it, they went all the way back to Aeolia. And so they had to restart their journey all over again. So that's where the Bag of Winds comes into play lore-wise. Not much is said here. So his symbol is a horse. Now, you'd be like, why is horses popping up a lot? And I really can't answer that question. I guess gods just love horses. But this is his only spirit animal. But thankfully, we do have a wind horse that we can pick from. And for that reason, I went with the Aeromare Glidesdale line. They're both horses, and they're both wind element. I mean, I can't think of anything better. So for Aeromare, when you ascend Aeromare, you can cast it from your underworld as an artifact rune, empowering the ascension with the effect, the empowered Elestral cannot be targeted or destroyed by opponent's Elestral effects. I really never seen much play in this, but I think now with the Rhino sets coming out and it being artifact decks, I think Aeromare might make a resurgence in those kind of decks, but that's yet to be seen. It's still too early in the Daybreak meta for that. Maybe people are trying to cook it up and just haven't inputted it yet, but we shall see. Aeromare's Ascension is Glidesdale. He's a 7/5 2-spirit beater. You can expend a wind in order to give Glidesdale +5, making him a 12/5 until the end phase. When Glidesdale is empowered by Aeromare, you can attack twice during your battle phase. So if you clear your opponent's board when Glidesdale out while it's enchanted with Aeromare, you can automatically deal 4 spirits of damage, basically, if your opponent can't stop you. Really strong, really powerful. Next is Kion. Kion is another one of the pantheons, as I described last week, that not a lot is well known for her. So she doesn't generally have a known symbol of power, but she is known for snowflakes and icicles. Now, you really can't correlate that into an actual item to use on like a Thunderbolt or a Trident that can be forged. So what better way for a mage or a frost user than a staff, a wizard, or witch, however you prefer. And that's what Scepter of Kione is. It's a staff used to harness and channel the frost element for Kion. Now, Scepter of Kion gives +2 attack and +1 defense. And when Kion is enchanted and the empowered Elestral destroys his Elestral in battle, you may special cast a 1-spirit Elestral from your hand. This allows you to swarm the board fast, which I think is really cool, but almost counterproductive because a lot of Frostmates prefer to be in the graveyard or special cast from the graveyard into play. So I don't know, I kind of don't like Scepter of Kion because it's kind of counterproductive in a way of what you're trying to achieve with Frost. Now, the only other time I would see it useful is when you are trying to bring back Catarines to get spirits back. That's really the only time I'd ever see Scepter in play. But her spirit animal, the only thing I could see is she's associated with white doves as her animal, which is weird because you wouldn't see doves in the cold. So for that reason, the Elestral I went with her is in Frostix. It's a bird. It's a frost spirit. It revives. I really can't say more on it. I think it's a perfect fit. And then the Stellar version of Frostex is white dove. Like I mean, I don't know what else more you want to say. It just, to me, naturally fits. I'd love to see if you think there's anything better to fit her for the white dove or another Elestral. Now we're moving into the new element that was introduced in Daybreak, Solar. And for that reason, we're talking about Apollo. Now, Apollo has a decent amount of symbols of power, but for Elestrals, they went with his bow. I think they could have done something else with his bow, with it instead of bow, because his other symbols are his bow and arrows and his lyre, which is a musical instrument. With Apollo focusing more on foretelling the future and music and whatnot, I thought it would have been more fitting for the lyre as his weapon, because bow would fit the next divine that we'll talk about in a little bit. But for him, his sacred animals are deers, swans, cicadas, hawks, ravens, crows, foxes, and mice. But he's also widely known to be associated with the cows, which I'll get into in a moment. So they went with bow as his divine artifact. For bow of Apollo, the empowered Elestral can attack spirit decks directly. When Apollo is enchanted and the empowered Elestral deals damage to an opponent, you can return spirits from your underworld to your spirit deck. It's interesting that you can only return one. If, let's say, I deal you 2, I only get 1 back and whatnot. I think there should have been some correlation of, so if I dealt 4, I should get 4 back as a benefit, but I'm not the creator of the game or playtesters. But for him, there is an animal, there is an Elestral that is his divine animal. There's no debating it, because it's literally one of the first Elestrals that have been created that enhances the divine rune. And that is the Soul Bell line. Soul Bell is a 1/4. It's when you foretell, you may special ascend the Soul Bell to a foretold soul stocks. Apollo's effect is stronger because when you foretell, instead of 3 cards, you reveal an additional 2 cards, which is 5 cards, which means it's a lot easier to get Soul Bell to ascend to its ascension line and allows you to see more options for the effect. Now, Soul Bell, when special ascended or normal ascended, it's a regular ascension, is Soul Stocks. So when Soul Stocks is special cast, you can enchant up to 2 solar from your underworld to your field. Normally what you want to do is you would want to put that on your Apollos, and I'll get into that in a sec, or your Lustragon if you have it on the field. Now, you can disenchant 1 solar from your Apollo, which is why you normally want to put your ones from your underworld onto Apollo. You can disenchant it in order to target and destroy a card. It's a free pop. Think of it almost like another Lustragon, but not as broken. Now we're moving on to the newest divine element that was teased in Daybreak, but we got more of in Shattered Stars, and that is the Lunar Spirits. Lunar is represented by Artemis, the twin sister of Apollo, as I talked about in the last video. Her symbol of powers is bow and arrow like Apollo, a quiver which holds your arrows, and hunting knives. So her divine has not been revealed yet for this game, but I would probably speculate that it would also be a bow to kind of go with Apollo because they're twins. Why have different artifacts? But that's just my thought. And then my thought is, if her divine is a bow, like Apollo was, hers would be, when a suppressed Celestial is destroyed while Artemis enchanted, your opponent must expend 1 spirit. I might change that. I don't know how powerful it is, because Zeus was, if it destroyed, you expend 1, and then if Zeus was out, it's 2. I might make it 2 for Artemis as well and have it be 1 normal before Artemis is played. So yeah, that's what I think her divine would be. I mean, it'd be interesting to have it be like her hunting knives and whatnot, but I just think bow is the best fit for her. Now, her spirit animal, it's a deer. It's also a dog and bears. But in Elestrals, she already has a definitive symbol animal, and that's Fawnlet. Fawnlet was introduced in the newest month of Shattered Stars. Fawnlet, when this is normal cast, you can search your deck for an Artemis, or a Theroheart, which I believe Theroheart is probably the Ascension form for Fawnlet, and you add it to your hand. Fawnlet gets +1 defense for each Lunar enchanting each Artemis on the field. Now, the reason why Fawnlet is really interesting and what I anticipate her Ascension form will be, it's a baby, so it needs protection, which is Artemis is known for protecting animals. So that's why it beefs up Fawnlet's defense, making it a 3/6 if you fully enchant it. Now, Theroheart, on the other hand, I think would get the attack buff from Artemis instead of the defense, because it's a grown deer, and now that it can protect itself, it wants to be stronger to protect its babies, so Artemis doesn't have to. So that's where I feel that Theroheart is going to come into play, what its effect will be. Obviously, none of this is set in stone, this is just speculation. Well, that's it for today's video. It was a long video, me doing a lot of talking. That's it for episode 3. Next week, I will be talking about the stadium rooms, their background, what they're like in Mythology, and then I will also talk about Tartarus, another location that is big in Elestrals, that it was introduced a few months ago when they banned Sparkit. I hope you liked today's content. I hope you like Mythological Mondays. Make sure you smash that like button. If you really enjoy my content and you haven't already, please subscribe. I would also love any feedback you have for me in the comment section. Anything I can improve on, any things you want to see for Mythological Mondays, any other ideas you want me to do, I would love to hear it. This is SorenPlays saying bye and good evening to all you fellow Lunarians. Hope to catch you on the other side.